for, yes, this recording in progress. That's what we're here for. This event called Marketing to Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Thank you for registering for this. And we've got a great presentation for you today. So get comfortable, have some lunch, and I think we're going to learn a lot here today. By the way, I am Juan Vasquez-Lett, and I am the president of the PRSA for the Finger Lakes, and very, very happy that you are all here with us today. We are going to hear from some great folks. We're going to hear from Jamie Jacobs, who serves on the PRSA Finger Lakes board. And Jamie Jacobs is one of the managing partners at Rieger Marketing Communications, a firm based in Binghamton and serving clients throughout upstate New York and Northeast Pennsylvania. She began her internship at Rieger 20 years ago and moved up from account assistant to account executive to partner, and then took the role of managing partner in 2021. Jamie is a Binghamton University English major alumna. Jamie is a copywriter and project manager at heart and serves clients from a variety of industries, including financial services, nonprofit, healthcare, B2B, and retail. And she serves both on our board here at the PRSA Finger Lakes chapter and the United Way of Broome County. And Dr. Diane Gayeski is a professor in the Communications Management and Design program at Ithaca College's Park School of Communications, where she previously served as dean for 11 years. An expert in corporate communication, organizational learning, and innovation, she has consulted with major organizations such as General Electric, the U.S. Navy, MetLife, and Fiat through her firm, Gayeski Analytics. Diane's academic work focuses on emerging technologies, workforce trends, and the strategic role of communication in business and higher education. Currently, she is exploring the impact of AI in both corporate and academic settings. With decades of experience at the intersection of industry and education, Diane is a frequent commentator on how colleges prepare students for the evolving workplace, and some of her students are going to be part of the presentation today. So we're very excited for that. I will turn it over to Jamie, Diane, and the students whose names you see up on the screen right now. So go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks, Juan, and hello, everyone. It's great to spend a lunch break with you as we explore some generational differences and how that will impact the work we do from a marketing and fundraising and PR standpoint. So first things first, let's talk about who are these people. So starting with the younger ones, who is Gen Alpha? So where these generation lines are drawn vary by researcher, we're finding, but Gen Alpha is somewhere in the ballpark of 2010 to 2024 birth dates, which means they are ages 5 to 15 now. And you're going to hear a lot more about that generation from Diane and our co-presenting students with us today. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to focus on Gen Z first. So let's talk about who they are. And I'll be honest, for a while there, I was used to thinking of myself, a millennial, as the up-and-coming adults. But millennials' time playing that role has certainly passed, and now it's time to pass the baton to Gen Z, and soon Gen Z will be passing that baton to the younger Gen Alpha. So by Gen Z, we mean those who were born between 1997 and 2010, which means they are now 15 to 28-year-olds. And compared to millennials like me, they're who are ages 29 to 43 right now, so right underneath us. You may notice that the Gen Alpha, the Gen Z, even the millennial year ranges are smaller than previous generational groups, and that's because they are based on cultural and contextual differences. So the rate of technology changing, the impact that that has had on culture is really is part of why those generations are starting to get even smaller as we go along. All right, so beyond Gen Z's birth dates, what do we know about them? First, they have a strong sense of self-agency. That's a nice way of saying they have some strong opinions. They question everything and everyone, or not afraid to. They tend to challenge the status quo, and they're not afraid to let you know what they think. Keep in mind, these are the people who had their parents telling them they could be anything they wanted, so there's a certain confidence to them that's notable when compared to earlier generations. And they have an ever-growing buying power, so they have our attention now as marketers and fundraisers. They're starting to be the age when they're making money, they're investing in things, some are even buying businesses. And it's no surprise that they love buying because they've had a smartphone in their hands for most of, if not all of their childhood, and ads telling them, quick click and you can have what you want. From a very young age, they were getting those prompts. On the political side, Gen Zers have grown up in a country that is more racially diverse and with less traditional families. So not all of them, these are all pretty broad strokes. So take that with a grain of salt, but they tend to be more progressive thinking. They're more socially responsible and are also more sensitive to minority groups than their older counterparts. They also obviously are digitally connected. We know that. They've spent more time online than any other generation that came before them. And that means that their secret talent is filtering out things, right? That's because they grew up amidst all that digital social media chaos, just an overload of information. We're talking consuming close to 7 hours plus every single day of that content. So they learned quickly that if they didn't tune out less important things, they would be completely overwhelmed. So the takeaway there for us is you really have to be relevant to cut through that clutter and not get filtered out. And of course, they have very short attention spans. Think goldfish. We're talking less than a minute, if that. So the takeaway there for us is to be very brief when appealing to them. Less is definitely more. So that's kind of who Gen Z is in a nutshell. Let's take a look at what they like to see. And from a marketing, fundraising, PR standpoint, these are all things that we should consider as we're targeting Gen Z. Few key components there: bright colors, personalization and inclusion, just a hint of nostalgia, and stories and solutions. And we'll spend a little bit of time on each one of these. So first, colors. In Rieger's art department, we spend a lot of time thinking about color, thinking about what different colors make people feel, and what certain palettes might be the place to pull colors from when trying to target different generations. So let's take kind of that walk through time a little bit. Let's look back at what baby boomers prefer. They prefer neutrals and classic colors that communicate that sense of trust. And then when Gen X came along, they preferred similar colors, but were starting to be more open to brighter hues. And then when millennials came on the scene, they wanted slightly more energetic colors, moving a little bit into pastels. And then as we got to Generation Z, they liked these bright contrasting colors. So go ahead and screenshot this. If you're going to sit down and design for Gen Z later on, you'll want to be pulling from this palette. So they like to see those colors. They also like to see themselves. They want personalization. They expect it. It's not something that is like oh, look at how much that pops out because it has my name on it. That's kind of a bare minimum with this generation. And as marketers, we can certainly deliver that to them through segmentation. So personalized designs, personalized messages, their own names will really go a long way. And luckily, in recent technology and some printing advancements, this making marketing materials personalized has become a lot easier and more cost effective than it's ever been. So this is just an example of a personalized higher education postcard, but certainly you can think about how that personalization would translate to your industry and your message. Okay. So it's not just their names they want to see. They want the ability to see themselves and all of the attributes that go with them. So it's why Bitmojis are so popular through apps like Snapchat, because it allows them to choose their skin tone, clothing, body type, and choose among the diversity that's available out there to see themselves in. So they especially value diversity in general, diversity in race, religion, lifestyle, gender identity, varying abilities. And some of those examples they would want to see inside your marketing and fundraising materials. And for really this point and for all of them, I would encourage you, especially if you're saying that, this seems like a moving target, what groups we want to make sure to represent. Um, in addition to staying informed yourself, also ask a Gen Zer to sit in on your next research or concepting discussion, or include them in a little quick, what do you think about this? Would you respond to this? Does this seem diverse and inclusive enough to you? And they will certainly give you their opinion on that. Okay, so personalization and inclusion they want to see, and nostalgia they want to see. Now, you may be saying, like, wait, what? uh, they want to see things that are from the past, maybe even before they were born. As we look at this future generation, it seems like a contradiction. But when you think about it, it's 2025. And let's be honest, the last several years have been tough. Gen Z has been growing up in some really developmental years under the pandemic. And as they move ahead in their lives, those little hints of nostalgia provide them with a little bit of comfort. So if anyone has watched Mad Men, you may remember Don Draper said it like this: nostalgia is delicate but potent. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again. So just an example of that from a marketing campaign I saw recently was Pepsi. Anybody notice that they updated their logo? But they decided to use a shape that they used in their logo back in the 1950s through 1990s. They gave it new energy. They made it approachable to a new generation, but they gave that little bit of nod, right? So that certainly resonated well with Gen Z. And then the fourth thing that Gen Z wants to see is stories and solutions. So this chart just kind of helps us visualize what previous generations were looking for as opposed to what Gen Z are looking for. So previous generations wanted to hear what marketers had to say in terms of their offerings, pricing, their features, the capabilities. And Gen Z needs to know all that stuff too before they buy, but they know they can like go online later to figure that out when they're a little further down the road of the buying process. So on the front end, they would rather just have something that tells that story, shows a simple solution instead of feeling like a product is being sold to them. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So a little before and after here. So this is a comparison of language translation tools, okay? So Rosetta Stone puts out an ad like this back in the mid 2000s. It probably worked well then. It would not work with Gen Z today for many reasons. First of all, they list every language that they cover. They have a lot of different benefit statements shoved into this ad. They're trying to get across this story about a farmer. And Gen Z will move on from this very quickly to something that's easier to digest. So by contrast, there's Duolingo, right? On the flip side here, no mention of pricing, no mention of what languages they teach. They leave it all out. They just make the emphasis on this character, this icon from their logo, Duo the owl, okay? And so you can go online and see how Duo's interacting with people. He's dancing, it's fun, right? And over time, you see that Duolingo brand, you see that cute little green owl that maybe you like the narratives that they're showing or the videos that they're showing. And then later, you're booking a trip and you need to figure out a language translation tool. You're going to go to that app page. You're going to notice the little owl. And a Gen Zer is much more likely to say, okay, now I'll look at whether or not you had German on your list for me to learn. But that fun and bringing them into the story and the narratives around the brand is more important, especially on the front end. Okay, so that's kind of what Gen Z wants to see. Let's talk about what kind of issues they care about. So first, mental health. This is a really big one. So a few years ago, the Surgeon General announced that mental health related crises have increased in young people. And the contributing factors include loneliness, an overload of fear-inducing information at their fingertips. So the thing about Gen Z is they are more willing not only to be impacted by mental health struggles, but they're also more willing to be willing to talk about it, be willing to share. And they want brands and organizations to help them do the same thing, break that stigma, start those conversations. So think about it in your context. Are there ways to, if you're not directly helping people with their mental health, is there a way for your organization to donate to mental health related organizations and let your Gen Z clients, customers, donors know about that? Are there ways that you could be helping your employees from a workplace HR perspective with their mental health struggles? You know, making some strides toward that, and then publicizing that you're proud to be an organization that does that. That would really go a long way with Gen Z. The second thing that Gen Z cares about is belonging. And, you know, belonging is something we all care about, right? Across ages. It's a basic need for human beings, of course. But for the reasons I mentioned before that are locked into the background and the history that this generation has had so far, everything that they've gone through at such tender ages, feeling a sense of belonging is especially important to Gen Z, and they'll look for that from the places that they give to, the places that they buy from. So how do we do that? How do we give them that sense of belonging? These are two tactics that worked pretty well with Gen Z's older brothers and sisters in the millennial generation. But they're actually not as engaging for Gen Z. Rather, Gen Z responds better to things like events, challenges, submissions of user-generated content. And all of those help them perceive that meaningful connection. And especially when they are able to create their own, you know, photo, video, whatever it is, and join in on a exchange of ideas and exchange of visuals all around your brand. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So a while back, Chipotle did what they called the lid flip challenge. And I'll show you what that looks like. Maybe you remember it.
What's up, guys? I'm doing the Chipotle lid flip challenge. It's just easy. Wow.
Okay, so after this went out, people were encouraged to try their own lid flip challenge. And it was, of course, not as easy as that guy made it seem. That's why he's laughing and surprised. So they would upload their own videos of them trying to get this lid on the Chipotle bowl. And of course, they used the hashtag that Chipotle provided, and it made that community feel all around that brand. Now, I know that some of these challenges as someone who's on the marketing and PR side, it's like, sometimes that's a heavy lift, right? To get everybody involved in that. So some lower hanging fruit I would suggest is trying to use your, say, Instagram stories or social media posts that are going out there to be as interactive as possible. So this is just an example using a voting polls style template. And it doesn't really matter what it is that you're asking, even better if it can be wrapped around your brand. But what you're trying to do is just get people to respond, get people to engage in a way that they feel like, oh, I clicked that and I was part of showing who I am to the community that's around this brand. And no, I have not traveled to Venice. I wish. Looks a lot nicer there than upstate New York today. So the reasons that tactics like this work for Gen Z is that it's not just a one-way conversation between the brand, your brand's institutional voice, and that individual consumer or donor. Instead, it's a community that they build with not only you, but also with the people who are surrounding that community. So you're providing the way to connect, maybe through a hashtag, maybe through those social media connections, and you're asking them to be part of that. So it's just something to think about as you're making decisions about one-way content with Gen Z, to think, how could I try to make this more multi-directional, right? And I know that that sometimes means you have to give up a little bit of control. So that's always something to weigh out. I'm not saying it's a good idea in every situation for every organization, but certainly weighing out, letting a little bit of that control go to be able to get those comments, get people talking, get that community growing. So one community building communication channel beyond social media are e-blasts and e-newsletters. And you may be saying, like, really? They still use that? Yes, they still use that. Gen Z, 58% of Gen Z, which is the same as millennials, check news and information via email at least once a day, if not several times a day. So the only thing to keep in mind with Gen Z and emails is that they expect that you would give them preferences. Things like how often you contact them. What kind of content are you giving them, right? They expect, again, it's like a bare minimum. They expect that when they sign up for something, they would be able to say, okay, I want tips and coupons or notifications on when I should get my application in or whatever it is, but I don't want to hear about X, Y, and Z, right? When you allow them to customize that experience with you, that's also part of building that trust and that community. And then once they give those preferences, you better listen to them, because this is not a generation you want to piss off. And we'll get to why in a few slides here. So as we talk about e-blasts, I want to give you an example of a pretty darn good e-blast I saw recently that was very clearly aimed at Gen Z. So when it comes to emails, you want to keep it short, sweet, ideally with a catchy or humorous subject line if it's appropriate for your organization. You might choose to have them well designed, or it might look a little bit like this one, which looks like a real email, right? And it's intentionally that way because it's part of the joke. So this is an e-blast that was sent to my very Gen Z sister-in-law. And when I talked to her about doing this presentation, she sent it to me as an example that she enjoyed. So Uproot Clean is just a cleaning products company. And they knew that she had ordered a pet hair removal item before. And they sent this email saying, please ignore our last email in the subject line, which kind of caught her attention. And in it, it was an apology that they had hired a golden retriever in their marketing department and mistakenly sent out a deeper than normal discount code, but they were going to honor it anyway. So they weren't afraid to have a little fun, right? They were relying clearly on segmented data, right? They knew who she was. They were crafting that message specifically for her, and she was delighted. She'd probably buy from them again. And it's proving, she's sitting there and looking at her email, so email is still alive and well. So I encourage you to use that. All right, so Gen Z cares about mental health, they care about belonging, and then they care about impact. And what I mean by impact is that they want to see your organization is cause-oriented and is passionate about their values. So if you're not super clear with them about how your organization is helping to make the world a better place or the community a better place, if that's your scope, Gen Z may not be as interested in pairing up with you and selling what it is that or buying what it is that you're selling. But remember, as you make those messages and put those messages out there, they don't just want to be a world changer or see you be a world changer. They want to do it with you, right? They embrace the idea of doing it alongside you, doing it alongside all of those other people that are part of that community with you, and they want to feel empowered by that. So as you think about impact, I would encourage you to, in terms of those causes that people really want to see the needle move on, Think about these top causes that we see Gen Z resonate with. So organizations who are inclusive and all about equality, we talked about that already. Those who care about the environment, those who want to address hunger and homelessness, and those that care about women's health issues. So anytime your organization is helping in these areas, whether that's through volunteering, philanthropy dollars, whatever it is, shout that out to Gen Z loud and proud. The fourth thing and final thing that they care about here is authenticity. 45% of Gen Z say that a brand appearing trustworthy and transparent is a key motivating factor for engagement. And that means you make promises and then you keep them. So if you're going to talk about things like what your organization is doing, let's say for inclusivity or environmental stewardship, you better get ready to also walk the walk. Not only do they care about companies who have those values, right? They want to see those values carried out. They want to see that walk along with the talk. And here's what I was saying before about don't piss them off. They are more likely to not just ignore you, right? And not engage with your brand like older generations would. They are more likely to unfollow, hide, block, draw negative attention actively to your brands. I would say if you do anything that upsets them, but also specifically if they sense that you are putting up a facade, all of a sudden that will kick on their activism tendencies. And now those are the comments you don't want to see on social media, right? And that's because anytime they sense what they call that shallow veneer, they have absolutely no tolerance for it. Okay, so that's what they're about and what they want to see. Now let's just spend a few slides talking about consuming media, how they consume media. So this is just a chart that outlines their social media use. And I just want to draw attention to a few things here. First, how high YouTube is, right? So our takeaway there is, okay, let's take a look at our YouTube channels. If we're trying to target Gen Z, is our YouTube channel just a place that random commercials end up to die? Or is it a channel that we're using actively for the sake of Gen Zers that are using those or seeing those videos through that platform? Same with TikTok, of course. Just make sure you know what you're doing with TikTok till you get in there. It's a very distinct style. Spend some time in that network before you produce anything, before you write anything. And then look at how low Facebook is. 8.8% of Gen Z is on Facebook, right? And I know a bunch, I work with a lot of marketing directors and a lot of them are millennials and they're pushing Facebook. And I'm saying, okay, but if you're going to target Gen Z, they're not there. Their parents and grandparents are there. They're not there, right? We might be, as millennials and above, we may be more comfortable with Facebook. That doesn't mean that other generations are, okay? So that's social media in a nutshell and how they're engaging with that. They very much care about influencers. I won't go too far down that road because I know my Ithaca College co-presenters will hit that because Gen Alpha is very into influencers as well. But it's not just being on social media, it's also seeing who on social media is telling them what to buy and who to support. So in addition to social media, Gen Z also is constantly streaming stuff, right? They're streaming on their laptop, they're streaming through, say, Hulu or Sling or Roku or whatever on their TVs. So we always recommend a portion of media spend going to OTT or over-the-top video. Those are the videos that pop in to interrupt your stream-based television watching. And we also, it's like the least sexy one, you know, there, but paid search is absolutely something that should be part of every media buy to Gen Z. They love Google. They're constantly searching things. They're very used to being in that. So don't leave that paid search out. Right. So that's Gen Z kind of in a nutshell. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Diane and I'm going to stop sharing so she can pick it up from there. Thanks.
Hey everybody, I'm here with one of my students, Jamie Kay, and the others are on from their own apartments. And I am going to share my screen. Okay.
We saw it for a moment, Diane, and then it went away.
I saw that. I don't know why. Okay. All right. So who is Gen Alpha? We talked a little bit about that beforehand. I actually encourage you to look at them not only through the United States lens, but also look at it in terms of worldwide. There are 2 billion of these young people worldwide. Of course, they're really young. As Jamie said in the beginning, these are kids who are being born now. They're in elementary school and kind of middle school. So there's not a lot that we know about them, at least in terms of their fully mature selves and what their values and buying habits are going to be. But they are pretty active in the marketplace already. What we do know about them is that they are materially endowed. Their parents give them a lot of things. They have a lot of stuff. Of course, they're tech savvy. They are staying at home longer. Um, and that's what we expect. Of course, they are still living at home because they're little kids. But all the predictions of what's happening in the economy and education and what we see with the students who are just a little bit older than they are is that more likely it's going to take them a longer time to establish their own households. There's a great deal of diversity and not only tolerance for diversity, but embracing diversity, including not only racial and gender diversity, but I would say fluidity. Now, I have to say this might change. We see things happening in our culture, changing on a political landscape. Things are changing in terms of what's being taught or shared in school. So this could change by the time they're teenagers or younger adults. They are like the kids who are a little bit older, what we'd call social warriors. They are very interested in social causes and in their mental health. Just a couple of statistics about them. Um, there is still, even in this country, a number of them who live in poverty or in low income situations. We're not sure, again, with the economy in the United States at least, how this might change. But we do have concerns about increasing gaps in wealth and increasing diversity in terms of socioeconomic status. When I mentioned race and ethnicity, nearly half of US adolescents identified as a racial or ethnic minority back in 2019. We're going to see much more of that. We're going to see much more of a racial mixture. And the predictions are that race may even not be as salient to these really young kids as it might have been to older generations, because a lot of them are of very mixed racial backgrounds. So their identity is much more complex. There's lots of things about them. This is a screen that captures some of the research from Kindle, which is one of the companies, marketing companies in Australia, that's been the primary one to do any research on Gen Alpha right now. So although in some areas of the globe, United States and in Europe, the population is actually shrinking, we need to also look to places outside the US. I actually teach a global PR class, and our students are doing presentations on regions, and just finished doing a presentation on Africa. And the population boom in Africa and the young people who are going to be really reshaping the world's future are very much on the African continent. So I would encourage everyone to look at Gen Alpha with a global perspective. Of course, technology has really changed over time. We see outgoing technologies like MySpace and MP3s and fax machines and things. And now everything, of course, is mobile and probably will get into embedded technologies, and certainly artificial intelligence is something that they're growing up with. Like the older kids grew up with a cell phone. The young kids not only have a cell phone, but they have AI on it. There's some interesting trends. And one really interesting thing that people are noticing is among Gen Alpha is this obsession with things like skincare.
Time for a Sephora. I got this from Sephora as my birthday gift. You had to come to Ulta because they came out with a new fat oil.
Every time you go into Sephora now, it's just all little girls. This is why people are saying there needs to be an age requirement to shop here.
There's a controversial viral trend igniting a firestorm. Tween girls obsessed with beauty products, some taking over the aisles and wreaking havoc in stores like Sephora and Ulta. And
I won't show the whole thing here, but we do see a real passion for self-care, both mental health self-care as well as physical self-care. So we see literally 9-year-olds obsessed with spending a lot of money on creams that will prevent wrinkles. So that's a little bit different. As I said, they're very focused on mental health and social issues such as the environment. So we're seeing apps like meditation for kids. We're seeing products like this one from Uno. It's a little card game, very prominently advertising on that packaging. It's nothing but paper, made entirely with paper. So they're sensitive that we're trying to eliminate plastics and get into more recyclable things. And this makes it very clear in this kids game that they're being green. The other thing that we're seeing, and those of us who are teaching, we really see a lot of differences happening over really the last 15 years, but especially among younger people in terms of neurodivergent learning differences, chronic diseases, and special accommodations. So what does that mean for people in marketing? Well, in education, we have over the past years been accommodating students who otherwise would never have made it in school. And this is a great thing. We are including students not only in elementary and high school, but at university level who have pretty serious learning disabilities, other kinds of either mental or health chronic problems. And we are doing that successfully. But those people then are going to go on into the workplace, and they're going to expect those same kinds of accommodations in the work and in all their buying and purchasing environments. So we see more people who are, for example, have on the autism spectrum or ADD, they want low distraction environments, more time to do things. And so we need to be aware of that as we present any kinds of communication materials or even events that we're going to be seeing more neurodivergent participants. About 15% of our Gen Alpha receive special education services. So that's a big part of our population. And now I'm going to turn this over to Amelia to talk about a couple of actual Gen Alphas.
Hi, thank you, Professor Gayeski. Hello, everyone. My name is Amelia Springle. I'm currently a sophomore at Ithaca College. And for this research, I conducted an interview with two sisters who are both a part of Generation Alpha, and they are only a year apart in age. So I really wanted to dive in and see what their differences are within the questions that I asked them, and just how they were being raised, and kind of how that reflects in today's world. So starting off, the first sister is Catalina. She's 10 years old. And so for both sisters, I asked them these 4 simple questions just to kind of gauge what they're feeling and what they're learning in the world today. So for Catalina, just to list off, her favorite toy as of now is Legos. Her favorite TV show that she's been watching is Henry Danger. Her favorite subject in school is math. And then I asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up, and she said an artist. And then moving on to the second sister, Sabrina. She's just a year younger, but her answers varied a little bit. So her favorite toy are the magnetic sticks. They also come with a little magnetic ball as well, so she can get creative with them and build different shapes. Her favorite TV show is Bluey, and her favorite subject in school is also math, so that did not differ. And then she said that she would like to be a Wegmans manager when she grows up. So with these responses, it just shows that Generation Alpha is still very curious and eager, as Gen Z were when we were younger. And they still use creativity on a daily basis. And this may be due to the parenting styles and how they've grown up. But it is reassuring to see that not all children are glued to screens, and they still are able to play with toys, and still have an interest in school and when it comes to their play as well.
Great. And Jamie.
Hello, everyone. I'm also Jamie. I'm a third-year student here at Ithaca College, part of Dr. Gayeski's team. So I'll be talking a little bit about the impact of COVID-19 on Generation Alpha. So for Generation Alpha, at the height of the global pandemic back in 2020, Generation Alpha at the upper end of things would have been around 10 years old. So at a very formative stage. And seeing the shift from the real world to the virtual world, saw that, a lot of students were becoming more reliant on devices as they were online for school and online for social reasons and recreational reasons as well. With that, they removed the socialization aspect of traditional schooling, and that led to a lot of a great impact on their development in emotional and social skills. So how they interact with people around them. And with this constant flow of internet access, it has posed a challenge for a lot of traditional educational styles and settings, seeing as students are now more accustomed to instant gratification and immediate feedback that they would receive when they're online and interacting online. In terms of personality traits and behaviors that they've learned, when they've become so accustomed to this lifestyle of, seclusion and being isolated, they become more introverted and are, more accustomed to their own personal space. So again, going back to the point of social skills, but on the other end of things, they're a lot more resilient, like with their formative years being amidst a lot of chaos and unprecedented times, they've come out the other end thinking that they can, survive anything. Now, for older Gen Alpha, health and well-being, this does apply to all, but health and well-being. So in terms of physical health, studies show that a lot of children who lived with siblings and had open outdoor areas were a lot more physically active, but those who, had parents working from home and probably were only children or didn't have as much space to play outside were, adopting these sedentary lifestyles. We talked more about like mental health and the importance of mental health, but also the decline of mental health for these Gen Alpha children, where they're, this newfound seclusion where, it leads to a lot of issues with anxiety and fears, and moving over into this shift in family and friend dynamics, spending more time with immediate family members led to a boom in, increased quality time and the views of their family members that they probably didn't have before. But it's slightly different for friendships, where they're learning to develop these, social relationships from a distance. So there's been a shift in, older generations being accustomed to this social interactions that Gen Alpha has, had limited versions of. But what's next for Gen Alpha? Gen Alpha, being accustomed to being at home and being online and in the virtual world for extended periods of time and growing up with parents and guardians who were working from home, there's this expectation for flexible work schedules and conditions, that whether that be working from home part-time or working from, remote work most of the time so they can work wherever in the world, as this is, what they grew up seeing. And moving forward from that, Gen Alpha will be a generation of innovation and sustainability as they strive to create, a human experience and to better the human experience and better the planet moving forward.
All right, I
Awesome.
will turn it over to Anne now.
Hi everyone, I'm Anne. I'm a senior at Ithaca College, and some buying trends for Gen Alpha include online shopping. Now, I'm sure that's not much of a surprise considering online shopping has increased in general over the last couple of years, but we are starting to see like Gen Alpha tweens and teens starting to online shop more. And Gen Alpha is often influenced by their peers, their family, as well as online influencers, which brings me to my next point about social media and the role of influencers. So some popular media channels are YouTube, traditional TV, streaming such as Disney Plus, and social media. Now we're starting to see like older Gen Alpha maybe using social media to shop. And again, this is kind of a trend in general with social media because people kind of are using it to find out about trends and kind of what to buy. But Gen Alpha, I think this will be a trend that kind of continues with them, especially considering that from a young age, Gen Alpha has had access to like online influencers that kind of talk about like toys and clothing reviews. So I feel like that is kind of a way that Gen Alpha learns about what to buy and what they might like to buy. And then finally, just to briefly touch on video games. So some popular video games among Gen Alpha include Roblox, Minecraft, and Fortnite. Now, these are games that center around building or creating something. And I bring this up, I mean, yes, that's relevant if like you're a video game developer, but also on like a broader scale in the sense that like this is a generation that might look for those kinds of experiences, whether they are digital or maybe in person. And also this normalcy of kind of making virtual purchases. So a lot of these games have in-app purchases. So I feel like this generation is growing up with kind of very normalized buying something that's kind of related to a virtual world or something that's not actually physical. So I just feel like those are some interesting buying trends related to Gen Alpha.
And Amanda is going to give us a little more of actually an international perspective.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda. I'm sorry for my voice. I'm an international student, second year student at Ithaca College. And I want to take you, before we end the presentation, I just want to take you to a quickly day in life of a Gen Alpha kid, especially a teenager. So here we have Rachel. She's 14 years old and she's from Poughkeepsie, New York. She loves to create things, so especially toys. All the things that she has in her room, she made it. She loves to bake it, especially cakes, and she loves the scientific topics, and she loves to play instruments. Her favorite instrument is to play electric guitar. However, one thing that is very special for her is that she has no social media accounts at all. And could you please go to the next slide? And the other side, we have this also amazing Gen Alpha teenager. Her name is Nina. She's from São Paulo, Brazil. A totally completely reality from Rachel. And different from Rachel, she's very active on social media, especially on TikTok and Snapchat. She loves also the makeup and the beauty world, different from Rachel. And this is a fun fact about her. When she went to New York when she was 12, she bought a lot of like skincare products, and because she was influenced by a TikTok trend in that time. And could you please go to the next one? Oh, or just two? Oh, sorry. It's just like the order is a little bit different, but that's okay. So here are the questions I asked for Rachel. So I just kind of wanted to understand a little bit more about her, what she does. As I said before, I asked her what she does on her free time And she says, well, I paint, I play my guitar, I craft. So you can see that she does a lot of things that I believe that if she has social media, she wouldn't be able to do them. And I asked her, why do you choose to not like have social media? And she says, well, I have different interests. It just doesn't get to me, and I rather spend my time making other things. And so you can see that she has this mindset that she doesn't want to be on social media because it's a waste of time, and she rather make things or uh, like that she couldn't do if she was on social media. And the last question I asked her was just what sets you apart from other kids who of your age who use social media? And she says, beauty standards. They really care about being extremely pretty. I've seen a 7-year-old kids putting makeup on and doing in skincare. And and she said that's definitely not healthy and actually can damage the skin. And so you can see that she's just very different from kids of her age who really are in this beauty world, and they care about how they look like rather than just be a kid. So, and the other, could you go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, it should be up there now.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
It's not showing.
It's not, are you seeing the next slide?
Yeah, right now. Yeah. So in the other side, we have Nina, which is completely different from Rachel. I asked her what she does on her free time, and she said, well, I hang out with my family and friends, but take a look to this. I spend a lot of time on social media. And I asked her, what's your favorite thing about social media since you love to spend time on it? And she said, well, I'm a very influenced person. That's why I love doing skincare, going to Sephora, because this is a trend. So, and also because all of her friends do. So you can see it's very different from Rachel because though they're 1 year apart, but like they're from the same generation, they have this completely different mindset. And and one of the quotes that I got from the interview that I was very shocked, but I was glad that she said that. It was social media makes us age really quickly, which is something that I know from this generation. I think those young kids, they just wanted to grow up. When I was her age, I was everything that I care about. It was just to watch a movie and, I don't know, eat popcorn with my sister. And they have this different thought that no, I want to be a teenager. I want to have a boyfriend. I want to be the prettiest girl on my age. And it's very different, and one of the reasons why it's because of social media. It's because they've seen a lot of other kids on social media uh putting makeup on, and they think they have to be like them. And this is one of the reasons why I think Nina is just so different from Rachel, because Rachel doesn't have social media. So she's not in this world of I have to be the prettiest girl. I have to be uh always looking good. And this is the main difference. And also I asked her, this is not off the topic, but I'm sorry. How did you feel about the new law banning? Because let me explain. Right now in Brazil, the president of Brazil, he put a law that kids, they could not bring their phones to school anymore, which I think is very important because when I was in high school, I've seen like those young kids, they didn't like interact to each other. They were just on their phones or on their iPads. And right now, I think since they cannot use this technology anymore, I mean, they can use the iPad, but not phones. They have to uh, talk to each other more. And that was her answer. At first, I was really angry. Now I think it's good. Some kids weren't even talking during break, which is kind of insane. And this is the power of technology. This is a power because technology, iPads, phones, they became one of those kids' friends. So they don't need more friends in their mind. And just to finish, what I've realized from this research is that definitely being from the same generation doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna have the same behavior. And one of the aspects for that is cultural, of course, the way you were raised by your parents, and of course, social media. And also social media can shape those kids' personality and identity. And for me, the issue it's not that they have social media. It's not the social media itself, but how they are using it. And in my mind, I believe that we need to find like some approach and to make those kids away from social media or and that's it. I'm sorry. And one of the examples is just what the president of Brazil did, which is restrict phone use in schools. That's basically.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
So thank you for your attention. I think you saw some interesting like little vignettes of what some real Gen Alphas are like and that they're not all alike.
All right, we'd love to take any questions if anybody has them. I know we only have a couple minutes left, or we can turn it over to Juan.
And actually, if you got a question, you can raise your hand and let us know if you have a question, or you can put it in the chat also.
And also, if we run out of time today, Diane, Professor Gayeski, and I would be happy to answer any questions afterwards.
I will say though that not only was this a lesson in how to market to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, it was also a glimpse into possibly for folks who may be here that are managers, managing future employees and what they and what they're used to and what they expect.
Oh, I see a question come through in the chat. Let's see. From Jill, thank you. How do the trends for Gen Z and Alpha differ for boys and men versus girls and women? Great question, Jill. Diane, do you have thoughts about that? If not, I can take a swing.
Well, why don't you go first? I do have some thoughts, but go ahead, Jamie.
So I mean, I'm thinking back to on the Gen Alpha side, just from your presentation, you know, all the emphasis on beauty products seems more women focused, and it was interesting seeing those the way that the young girls were introduced as enjoying toys that were more STEM based. So some of these assumptions about gender may not be as black and white as they were in previous generations. It's starting to feel like they can, like, regardless of your gender, you can do anything.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think and I do think that there's seems to be some difference between boys and girls in terms of social media use. And I think as you were seeing in a couple of different examples, with these really little girls, this obsession with beauty seems to be something that's a little new and different, a kind of a different twist. I mean, little boys are on social media as well, but not to the same extent. And so I think, you know, you would reach them in different ways, and the trends are a little bit different. They certainly get their information that way, but you know, what we've seen in the research so far, again, these kids are really young, but I think little boys tend to watch things more or play games more online.
Yeah.
And the little girls are more, you know, is kind of a stereotype, but it's more about the socialization, and it's more about my friend did this, I like this, I just bought this, oh, that's cool, I want to buy one too, what kind of makeup did you have? So it's around those kind of things a little more. It's more the interpersonal sharing.
And Jill, that would make a great follow-up that I just wrote down as a to-do for me, to take a look back at that social media use of Gen Z and see if I could get a gender specific one. So thanks for that.
Yeah, great
and
question.
I'm happy to share that if I find it.
We have another
from Beth.
Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
Okay, I think we're looking at the same thing. Beth said, I wonder more about career choices and post high school education choices for Gen Alpha. Yeah, probably a lot more in STEM and I know in Diane's graphic, it was I know there's a lot going on in that graphic, but there was a line there that talked about jobs that like didn't exist before. And as you went closer to the right side, you know, influencer training, for instance, that's something that didn't exist before. And we talked to a lot of clients that are struggling with recruitment. And it's because a lot of young people can make money going and being influencers, and they don't have to flip burgers at the McDonald's. They can get online and make that money. So I agree. It will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mentioned earlier in terms of like the flexibility of working conditions, but also those noticing trends of wanting to explore different career fields for different points in time, wanting to work in one field for maybe 1 or 2 years and then moving on to another venture. Because, this generation that is coming up is very fascinated by all the things that you can do and not limiting themselves to one path when they the world is their oyster, so they want to be able to do everything. And they, show those patterns now that they are exploring a bunch of different things. So I think it's not as black and white as like wanting to go into STEM or going to business or going to the arts, but wanting to explore different ventures that allow you to kind of get your foot in the door in each, sector.
Yeah. Thanks for those questions. I think we want to wrap it up now as we're pushing past the 1:30 hour. Any closing thoughts, Juan? I'll turn it back to you.
Well, I mean, I think that this was a fantastic presentation. I think all of our student researchers did a wonderful job too. So thank you to all of you for giving us that fantastic information. And I think that it's also given us a lot to think about as marketers, as bosses, as managers too, to really think about working with this up and coming generation. So we thank you so much for that insight. You did a fantastic job. So be proud of that too. So I hope everybody was able to take something away from this. And let's thank Jamie, Diane, and everybody else here that did a fantastic job. Thank you so much for putting this together. We appreciate it, and I hope everybody here learned a lot from today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Our
All
pleasure.
All right.
Thank
Have
you,
a great week,
everybody.
everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.